Have you ever met someone who seems unable to accept the fact that other people think, behave, or live differently from them? Maybe they become angry when someone disagrees with them. Maybe they constantly criticize people who don't share their opinions. Or maybe they believe their way of doing things is the only reasonable way. We all have moments when we're impatient, judgmental, or frustrated by differences. But when these behaviors become persistent patterns, they can reveal something deeper about how a person handles disagreement, uncertainty, and perspectives that challenge their own. Intolerance doesn't always look aggressive. Sometimes it's subtle. It can appear as dismissing someone's opinion, refusing to listen, becoming defensive when challenged, or struggling to accept that there may be more than one valid way of seeing a situation. In today's video, we'll explore 7 signs of an intolerant person, the psychology behind these behaviors, and why developing tolerance is an important part of emotional maturity and healthy relationships. And remember, these signs don't automatically mean someone is a bad person. We're looking at patterns of behavior, not diagnosing someone's personality. Sign 1, they believe their way is the only right way. One of the clearest signs of intolerance is the belief that there is only one acceptable way to think or behave. An intolerant person may struggle with statements like, "That's just your opinion. There's only one way to do this. Anyone who thinks differently is wrong." The problem isn't having strong beliefs. Everyone has values and opinions. The problem begins when someone becomes unable to recognize that reasonable people can reach different conclusions. Psychological flexibility involves being able to consider new information and adapt when circumstances change. An intolerant person may struggle with this flexibility because changing their perspective can feel like admitting they were wrong. And for some people, being wrong feels threatening to their sense of identity. They become defensive when challenged. What happens when you disagree with them? Do they become curious, or do they immediately become defensive? An intolerant person may interpret disagreement as disrespect. Instead of hearing, "I see things differently," they hear, "You're attacking me." This can lead to arguments, raised voices, personal criticism, or attempts to shut down the conversation. Being challenged isn't necessarily a threat. Sometimes disagreement gives us an opportunity to discover something we hadn't considered. But when someone feels the need to defend themselves every time their beliefs are questioned, learning becomes much more difficult. They judge people quickly. Another common sign is making strong judgments about people without knowing their circumstances. They may see someone's behavior and immediately assume they know why that person acted that way. They're lazy, they're selfish, they're stupid. They just don't care. But human behavior is complicated. We rarely know everything happening inside another person's life. Psychology teaches us that people can make quick judgments based on limited information. The problem is when those judgments become rigid and leave no room for context. Tolerance requires the ability to pause and think, could there be something I don't know? That simple question can prevent a lot of unnecessary judgment. Sign 4, they struggle with differences. An intolerant person may become uncomfortable when people have different lifestyles, personalities, opinions, or priorities. They may ask, why can't you just be normal? Why don't you do things the way everyone else does? Why would anyone want to live like that? The underlying problem is the assumption that difference automatically means something is wrong. But human beings aren't supposed to be identical. People have different backgrounds, experiences, personalities, cultures, and values. Tolerance doesn't require you to agree with every choice someone makes. It means recognizing that difference exists without automatically responding with hostility or contempt. They have difficulty listening. Another sign of intolerance is listening only to respond rather than listening to understand. You might explain your perspective, but before you finish speaking, they've already prepared their response. They interrupt. They dismiss your point. They change the subject. Or they immediately start explaining why you're wrong. Healthy communication requires listening. You don't have to agree with another person to understand what they're saying. In fact, understanding someone else's perspective can make disagreement more productive. An intolerant person may focus so strongly on defending their own position that they never genuinely consider the other person's experience. Sign 6, they struggle to admit when they're wrong. Nobody gets everything right. We misunderstand people, we make bad decisions, we say things we later regret. Healthy people can acknowledge these mistakes, but intolerance can make admitting mistakes extremely uncomfortable. Instead of saying, "I was wrong," the person may create excuses. They may blame someone else. They may change the subject. Or they may find another reason why their behavior was justified. Why? Because admitting a mistake can feel like losing. But changing your mind isn't losing, it's learning. Real confidence doesn't require you to be right all the time. It allows you to say, "I didn't see it that way before, but now I understand." That is a sign of psychological flexibility, not weakness. They have little patience for people who don't meet their expectations. The final sign is a lack of patience. An intolerant person may expect everyone to behave according to their standards. When someone makes a mistake, they become frustrated. When someone learns slowly, they become impatient. When someone communicates differently, they may become irritated. Their expectations become more important than the other person's circumstances. But everyone has limitations. Everyone learns at a different pace. Everyone makes mistakes. And everyone has moments when they aren't at their best. Tolerance doesn't mean having no standards. It means understanding that human beings are imperfect. Sometimes patience is more useful than criticism. When these behaviors become persistent, they can have a serious effect on relationships. People may begin avoiding difficult conversations. They may stop expressing their opinions. They may feel like they have to carefully choose their words. Eventually, communication becomes less honest. And when people don't feel safe expressing themselves, emotional distance can grow. An intolerant person may believe they're simply being honest or standing up for what they believe. But honesty without respect can become hostility. Strong opinions aren't the problem. The problem is believing that everyone else must think exactly the same way. The good news is that tolerance is something people can develop. Start by becoming curious. When someone disagrees with you, instead of immediately asking, "How can I prove them wrong?" try asking, "Why do they see it this way?" You don't have to change your beliefs. You don't even have to agree. You're simply allowing yourself to understand another perspective. Practice pausing before reacting. Listen without immediately preparing a counter-argument. And when you're wrong, allow yourself to admit it. Every time you do these things, you strengthen your ability to handle differences without becoming defensive. Intolerance isn't always about hatred. Sometimes it comes from insecurity. Sometimes it comes from fear of being wrong. Sometimes it comes from rigid thinking or simply a lack of experience with perspectives that are different from our own. And that's why it's important to look at these behaviors with self-awareness rather than simply using them to judge other people. Because the real question isn't only, do I know someone who is intolerant? It's also, have I ever behaved this way myself? Maybe you've dismissed someone's opinion too quickly. Maybe you've become defensive when someone challenged you. Maybe you've judged someone without knowing their story. We're all capable of becoming less tolerant when we're stressed, afraid, or emotionally triggered. The goal isn't to become someone who agrees with everyone. The goal is to become someone who can disagree without disrespecting, someone who can listen without immediately attacking, someone who can change their mind when new information deserves consideration, and someone who understands that being different doesn't automatically mean being wrong. Because emotional maturity isn't about making everyone think like you. It's about becoming secure enough to allow people to be different from you. You don't have to agree with everyone to respect them. Sometimes the strongest form of confidence is being able to say, "I see things differently, and I can still listen."